Good evening, Des Moines. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty here on webcast1live.com, bringing you a fresh perspective on the news and the events of the last week. We hope at least that we think it's fresh. I hope that you guys do too. So thanks for joining us tonight. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We got North Korea back in the news, trying to make some trouble. We've got the UN passing overwhelmingly a new set of proposed language for a treaty, for an international treaty on on guns. But Doc, those are the two big things we're going to talk about, and there's some other local things going on. More back and forth between the governor and Senate Democrats about how the education reform is going to kind of pan out. There's a little bit, they're coming together a little bit closer. There's been some rumblings of the session having to go long again for the past few years.
Good, they can earn their money.
But well, you know, they don't make that much in the first place. If you know anything about state politics, you know these guys are way part-time and aren't getting rich doing this stuff. So Doc, how you feeling today?
Hey, I'm feeling good. My weekend, I was sick, so I didn't get to enjoy Easter with my family or anything like that. How was your Easter?
It was pretty fun. We went up to Minneapolis, saw the folks.
Good.
Got to play with my nephew, Caden, who is a little over a year. He turned a year old February 25th, but since he was born about 6 weeks premature.
Okay.
He was supposed to be born in May and ended up coming in at the end of February. I guess, you just can't contain that much awesome.
No, you can't. And you know what else is awesome? You look just like him. Minus the hair. You got fat little cheeks and nice blue eyes.
He's pretty cute. He looks more like his dad, especially when it gets really serious. But he's a pretty funny guy. He was really cranky all this weekend.
Much like his Uncle Blake.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of good things to say about anybody. Apparently, he spent the night with my folks, and my mom said that he and her had some reconciliation to do. They didn't get along very well.
They didn't get along too well. Well, but on your Facebook page, he's just cute as a bug's ear.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him being, awful for a minute.
No, I couldn't either, but I got to see it. And really what's the problem with him right now is that, and we'll get off my nephew in a second, but what's been his problem lately is that he just gets tired like that. He'll be playing. He can't crawl yet because he's still too little. He's a little underdeveloped still, but he tries really hard, and so he wears himself out just playing with his toys, rolling around on the carpet, and doing things that little babies tend to do. And then he will get, and you can tell because he's got these little tics that he does when he gets super, super tired.
Yeah.
And when he gets the least bit sleepy, if you don't let him do exactly what he wants to do, he just completely melts down.
Oh my! Well, did you do any Easter egg hunting?
No, we didn't. We ended up kind of spending the entire time hanging out at my folks' place with church on Sunday, which is always a kind of a good deal for me. You don't get me in a church very often, but whenever I visit,
and it didn't burn to the ground, and you get hit by lightning.
Nope. There's a very low probability of that happening unless there was a thunderstorm in the area, I suppose, or an electrical problem inside the building. But no, whenever I visit my folks, I like to, kind of go. I know it's important to them, so I like to be there for them.
You bet. Well, Easter eggs are elusive little creatures, and they can be vicious if cornered. So if you are hunting Easter eggs after the season, be careful and use proper equipment.
I suggest an AR-15, and you better get them.
Yes, I better get them now before the UN grabs them.
That's right. Well, anyway, speaking of hysterical nonsense, North Korea is back in the news. And I got to tell you,
for the UN.
No, I got to tell you, North Korea is cracking me up, and I've got friends that I respect very highly who are taking this a lot more seriously than I think we probably should. Now, a little historical context, at least in my point of view. Back in 2002, when the Bush administration was kind of ramping up the rhetoric to go to war with Iraq, right before that whole thing got started, I was, obviously not really for that. I didn't understand why they were doing it, but said to myself and any friend who would listen, "Holy cow! Iraq really isn't a threat." The two main threats to the United States at this point, at least from their public rhetoric, what they chose to sort of demonstrate to the world, was Iran and North Korea. I think
Agreed.
that's pretty much hands down. I don't think there's a lot of disagreement that at the time, those were the two most vociferous kind of world agitators with respect to the United States. Now, we chose not to do anything about either one of them, and
for a whole decade.
honestly, didn't do anything. Sanctions, containment. North Korea is poor, but it has all of its money goes into its army and its nuclear program. But I noticed over the years in the approach that these states have taken to North Korea, because this isn't the first time this has happened. Now, they haven't threatened nuclear war on the mainland of the United States in a while, but every couple of years or so, they get a bee in their bonnet and they start mouthing off about what they're going to do to their neighbors to the south, and which completely frustrates everybody, including China, especially China, because they don't want to be drawn into any kind of armed conflict, and they'd have to be. And that's the big thing that really, as far as the international politics are concerned, that's really the problem. If North Korea does something stupid because of treaties, China and the United States, if they do something stupid to South Korea and pull South Korea into another conflict, China and the United States have to get involved on opposite sides of the line. Treaties require that. Our armistice treaty with the South Koreans at the end of the Korean War requires us to go in and get involved in any armed conflict that they find themselves in. China and the United States on the opposite side of a second Korean War, it is cause for concern. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I want to address something specific that you said is that we have treaties in place with our allies. But what we saw with the Russians and the Georgians is the United States will respond, but the United States also has to keep in mind what its vested interest is. We don't have a vested interest in going to war with North Korea and China. We just don't. Just like we don't have a vested interest in going to war with Russia, as the Georgians found out. So even though we did provide military assistance, we did not, per our ally agreement, go to war with Russia. So I think that's kind of the same kind of issue that's going to be happening over in North Korea. Is even though we're allied with South Korea, I think we're going to do a lot to avoid it.
Well, yeah, and I'd forgotten that we actually had an agreement with the Georgians, and I'm looking that up because I think it was to provide support, but I don't think that we necessarily promised to go in. Did we?
Well, it's an allied treaty. It's they were trying to apply for membership to NATO and the rest of that. So that's what they were trying to go for. Anyway, the point is not Georgia or the rest of it. The point is that South Korea has we'll get to that right after the break. We're going to show you something special that was created locally by local artisans. All right, take us out of here, Frank. You got it figured out or no? No, rats. Well, you're going to have to wait on the surprise. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Is Lefty, Doc Lefty. Welcome back. Thanks a lot for tuning in and sticking with us into this next segment of the program. We're talking about North Korea right now, and we're talking about the big international hubbub that this tiny country with no food and
no electricity
and a purported 1 million-man army is kind of perpetuating the rest of the world. It truly is the mouse that roared because they happen to have nuclear weapons. Now, I was listening to the BBC the other day, and a North Korean military official was granting them an interview, which is a really nice thing to do.
Yes.
Saying things like, we're bringing war to the United States mainland. We demand nothing less than the full unequivocal surrender of the United States to pull their B-52 bombers out of South Korea, stop doing these military exercises that we've been doing for the last month or so. That and when the interviewer pressed him, saying things like, well, you realize that what you're saying that'll cause the complete annihilation of the North Korean state, very angrily retorted that no, it's the Americans that'll be completely and totally annihilated. Now, Doc, I have my own views on this, but if you could please provide some context into just what kind of a threat North Korea actually poses the United States.
Well, like we saw in the First Korean War, the threat is not from Korea itself. It's from their ability to drag the Chinese in. And when Nixon, back in the 70s, went to China to try to open some doors and to get normalization of relations, that was one of the key issues, is how are we going to start treating the North Koreans? That we've kind of resolved that by now, because back in the late 50s, 60s, up to Vietnam, we had a much more stringent response. We would mobilize troops, send carrier groups. Since that time, basically our response has been, we'll send a cruiser, We won't send a carrier group because that sends a big signal,
right?
Well,
we have mobilized some forces for the sort of what the South Koreans are calling defensive military maneuvers. We've got a few bombers over there, and we've done a little bit that way, but really, and this is what's interesting to me, is that I think that the threat now actually would be greater than back in the 50s when the Korean War was first fought, because China is a much stronger military and economic power.
Yes.
And here's the thing. China has a vested interest in keeping this from going to hell, basically. And that is, North Korea is a nation on the brink. And they have been propped up solely by Chinese oil and economic benefit. That's it. It's China or nothing. These guys and food aid. These guys can't eat without China. They can't power their lights without China. They can't get running water of any kind without Chinese support. And if any sort of action whatsoever, the slightest breath of a military conflict from the South Korea, which is armed by the United States, that whole country collapses. Millions of North Koreans then flow across that Chinese border, creating a gigantic refugee crisis on the Chinese mainland. Then what will immediately happen, and this is what the Chinese fear, is that Korea becomes unified in the United States pocket. And China can't have a unified Korea on their front doorstep. Now, from a geopolitical standpoint, that makes perfect sense. You'd understand why a country like China would want to have that interest. However, what they didn't expect, and I don't think what anybody expected, because this took everybody by surprise from my reading of the news, that Kim Jong-un was going to be this sort of bellicose just shortly after taking power.
Well, I think 2 points about this. The Chinese have mobilized forces along the border, and I'm glad you brought that up. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's to go help North Korea. I think it's to keep the North Korean citizens in North Korea. That if you're caught...
That's kind of what... some reporting has been that way, absolutely. They haven't really... they won't come out and say that. No. But that's really more... Yeah,
that's much more likely. National Geographic has a very nice article about how North Koreans enter China illegally, and how if they're caught, they're basically enslaved in China. So it's not like they know that that's what the issue is. They fled north. So you still have people trying to flee, and they're trying to go to places like Mongolia and Russia, and illegal immigration from the south is a problem for China and Russia both, because there are millions of North Koreans. The second point is, Kim Jong-un being bellicose, that's a great term.
Thank you.
It was something that was unexpected. It's something that's caught the world by surprise. Here's what I think has happened, and that is his father, who ran the country for, 40 years? Something like that? Yeah. He had his group of people that he wanted to help his son. And when the old man died and the heir apparent stepped forward, I think he's probably alienated some people by that. Not because he's done anything outwardly to try to oust them, But these people have designs of their own. And I think that this whole play is a typical dictator's rush to blame the U.S. because we get blamed for a lot in a lot of these countries, particularly by, communist dictators. And so I think what this is a way for him to solidify his power and settle those people back home that are trying to cause him trouble.
Right. And I sort of see it that way, but I think it's a little bit more I think that it's a little bit more extrinsic than that. I think that they're looking more internationally than internationally. I think they're pretty consolidated behind him. He doesn't have a whole lot of factions. The military is behind him. He's proven himself to be at least a capable leader. Or if he's a puppet, he presents a pretty good front. I think what this is that they're sort of their biennial or their quadrennial, or it seems like every 4 or 5 years they roust themselves and they do it basically to get everyone back at the table. Because this guy that was this military official that I was listening to on the BBC, this is how it went. We're going to kill the Americans. We're going to kill the Americans. We're going to bomb the American mainland, nuclear weapons. You guys are in trouble. We've got all this power. It was laughable to listen to him. But then the interviewer said, well, what if the Americans sat down at the table and talked to you? Oh yeah, we'd absolutely sit down. We would absolutely sit down and talk to anybody to avoid this conflict that we're absolutely positive we're going to win. Now, I might not be as old as some of the listeners who are out there. I don't have maybe as much experience. I know that I'm older than the current North Korean president. I've been in a lot of negotiations in my time. If I think that my side has all of the chips and can annihilate the other side, I'm not going to do much negotiating. In fact, I'm not going to put out there, hey, maybe we should sit down and talk, or we would let you come to the table with us, just to let do you a favor. North Korea is not doing the United States any favors. Now, I don't want to sound like a chest thumping, flag wearing jarhead or anything, but
hey, there's nothing wrong with sounding like a jarhead flag waver.
I'm just, people who know me know that I don't usually get this rousted up about this kind of stuff. However, it is kind of silly in the same way that I thought it was silly to go after Iraq back in 2003, because once again, what are they trying to prove? If you got a country that will absolutely be wiped off the face of the planet, not even an issue. It's not. And that's why no one's taking them seriously.
Yes. Well, we're going to be right back after this break. Hopefully, Frank has our surprise up and going. But if he doesn't, please stay tuned. These sponsors will help us keep our studio going. We'll be back right after the break.
Petrosian Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, this is Lefty with Doc and Lefty, bringing you back in on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening in Des Moines, Iowa. And I want to thank our sponsor, Petrosian Associates, for their kind patronage of this really wonderful public affairs program we've got here.
Absolutely. And we were happy to do it. I will tell you, I did the editing at about 1 o'clock last night. And I want to say thanks to everybody that participated in it, my staff, my voiceover guy, John Lensing, and Amy, who filmed most of the segment. Well, who did film all the segments.
Fantastic. So. It's really pretty slick, and we almost feel like a legitimate program.
We're almost
We're working on it. We're the little engine that could.
Website. We're just that far. We'll get it done.
We're almost there. So we've been discussing North Korea for this first half hour, and mainly we know. I kind of feel like we're beating up on the North Koreans a little bit because something tells me that you or I. Well, let's not go that far. I don't want to get that cocky because I think that you and I would probably spend the rest of our lives in a prison camp if we tried to take on the North Koreans. But,
yes.
So let's not get too carried away. But I had a bunch of friends of mine who I follow on Facebook and their various tweets. And this is kind of nonpartisan. Folks that I know about their political leanings, left and right and center. A few of them, who I was surprised by, were expressing a little bit of concern. Up till now, we've been treating this thing kind of lightly because
they do it all the time.
They do it all the time. You gotta until what I tell clients of mine who come in and who have worries about what maybe the other side, they got a sort of like a custody problem and they're dealing with their ex and their ex is being unreasonable or making all these threats. What I tell them is let's see the paperwork until they sue you, until you're charged with something, until something happens to you. Don't worry about it because you will always have a chance to respond. And you will always have a chance to defend yourself if you need to. The North Koreans can't even get a missile to Hawaii. They can't even. They can barely get a missile over Japan. They claim they have the capacity, but every test that they've ever filmed for the public has been a miserable failure.
Yes.
And so
one of the interesting things now that you're talking about missiles.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, one of the theories that a bunch of my combat veteran flag waving jarhead buddies have, is that China and Japan have been squaring off over these 3 crappy islands in the middle of BF nowhere. Mm-hmm. And it's reached a fever pitch. And it seems kind of strange because, the people from Japan were occupying the islands. China was actually sending troops in the middle. They were, running at each other in the ships. And, suddenly about 2-3 weeks ago, Korea starts this thing up. It knocks the Japanese-Chinese thing off the map, and suddenly everybody's focused on North Korea. Now, one of the interesting things I laugh at is the North Korean soldier, the average North Korean soldier, isn't given bullets until he's ordered into battle. Then the bullets are distributed out. The only North Koreans that have bullets regularly dispersed to them are the ones that are directly on the DMZ. So like the snipers and the very tall elite people have the bullets. So that's another consideration here. North Korea, as we know, has always been rather belligerent. So I believe that there's several things going on, none of which the United States wants to have escalate, and neither do the Chinese. And I think the Chinese, at least on the surface, could be using this as a way to pull back and save face from the problems that they're having with Japan.
Right. Well, some of this, maybe that could be it. I don't think that there hasn't been, and you're just saying that's just speculation. I think that's probably
strictly speculation.
A fair way to.
Well, all this is speculation, really.
That's true. I think it's a fair way to characterize it. What I would say though is what I've seen from people is, some worry about how this is going to affect global trade. First of all, nothing that has to do with North Korea really affects global trade. They're not a member of the marketplace for the most part, and even if China has to do some extra legwork to prop up North Korea, they've been doing it since the 50s basically, and since China was able to sort of export things to North Korea, and it really hasn't affected much of the global trade. In fact, the Dow was up again over 14.6 today. So there's not a lot of market worry about North Korea threatening to bomb the U.S. On the other hand, and then going along with that, I saw some stuff about how we need to really, we really hope that President Obama steps up to the plate here, and we're going to be watching him closely as to how he responds to all this. And I'll tell you what, if our president responded to this, I think it would be the exact wrong move to make because it would give it legitimacy. Now, of course, he's going to know.
He's got to do some things, and he's done them.
Yeah, the administration is already 6 steps ahead because every presidential administration since North Korea became its own country has been 6 steps ahead of the public. There's stuff that is going on that we have no idea about, and especially with the exercises they're conducting in South Korea right now. But to suggest that he would look weak on foreign affairs if he didn't respond directly to Kim Jong-un's military secretaries, first of all, it's what they want. It's what the North Koreans want. It gives them legitimacy, and I feel like it would escalate it even further because then the Wen Xiaobao in China, I think that's the new guy, right?
Yes.
Wen Xiaobao in China, he would have to get involved because then you'd have all these 3 leaders, and now North Korea is on the same level as everybody, and that's just not feasible.
You can take this as a shot against Obama or not. But Obama's policy really is when there is a crisis, he has a non-response. He says all the right things, but he doesn't really respond. He doesn't send troops to Syria. He doesn't send arms to Syria really when they were rebelling. He doesn't really, even with his verbiage, he didn't really support the Iranians that were rebelling. He pretty much said, we support freedom. So I think in this case, his standard procedure of, either wait and see or non-response, however you want to do it, is going to serve him well. We do have a cruiser going to the South China Sea in a show of solidarity. But the real kicker is if the Americans send a carrier group. When we send a carrier group, that's when we're about ready to go, well, you know what, this is serious.
Well, and I would just say, we got to figure out exactly what we expect from the president from one crisis to another. No one expected him to actually send troops to Iran.
No,
only the most sort of like hawkish of Republicans thought that was even a possibility.
Yeah, but he could have used better.
He gets criticized for Libya, and it's become a failure now, but it was a success at the time, mainly because they can't get their own political system straight. And then he gets criticized for Syria for doing for coming out and saying we don't have an interest in Syria at all. And that's a legitimate response.
And that's true because the Russians do have an interest in Syria. And those are toes we don't really need to step on now, especially with Putin in charge.
It's a needless aggravation, in my opinion, because what do we get from coming in and taking Assad out? Really nothing. We thumb our nose at the Russians, but honestly, they're in such a terrible state with their cronyist pseudo-capitalism they've got going on over there and the corruption in their public officials. They'll never be able to pick themselves fully off the mat. So I really don't. It's horrible what's going on, but civil wars happen all the time. We get so worked up about what Obama's not doing in Syria that we ignore the fact that presidents, Clinton and Bush ignored Darfur the entire time. So I think we got to understand exactly what we're talking about and what we're asking the president to get involved in. Anyway, we're going to move on from this subject because we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to take a short break or a long break or whatever kind of break we feel like taking because our producer's in charge, and with
Absolutely.
Frank at the wheel, we'll never get steered wrong. So join us back on the other side of this break, and we will continue our discussion with some of the things, the UN Arms Treaty, with the school reform bill that the Senate just passed this morning, and go from there.
General Manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm Administrative Manager.
I am the Senior Technician.
From Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, We guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back to Doc and Lefty. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7. I want to thank all of Webcast One Live's sponsors that continue to show support for this program. They provide this studio and pay our producer Ryan's very, very extensive and well-sourced salary. I mean, this guy... he wanted to pick us up in a Bentley last week just so we feel like rock stars.
Well, because we are rock stars.
And I appreciate it, and I really do appreciate it. Anyway, so the next topic. Go ahead.
I'm going to say something here about Frank in there, and that is this kid does more with less than just about any producer I've stumbled across.
That's true.
He's really a wizard back there, and we don't pay him squat.
That's
the life of a producer.
He is awesome. He's just waiting for maybe the talent to act like they're talented and get picked up by
or develop some talent.
Exactly right. So the next topic that I know that the doc want to talk about is the new treaty that just passed overwhelmingly in the UN. I'm going to set the stage here because Doc has his own take, and you'll understand why I'm a little bit skeptical. So this treaty is I'm on the Washington Post website talking about basically it's a treaty that covers a wide range of conventional weapons, tanks, armored combat vehicles, so on and so forth, basically as a way to impose some sort of restriction, allow inspections if need be. Let's see, what else? Why don't you go ahead while I'm kind of getting educated on this?
Well, one of the way I read the treaty, and it has gone through several permutations over the last decade, there is a rabid cabal of people that want to pass this treaty that will control international arms trade. Now, the U.S. Senate has already said, we're not going to ratify it. Came right out and said it. Hillary Clinton, while she was out there, gunning for it, trying to get up some support for it, what was it, last summer, June, July, something like that. That's one of the reasons the Senate said we're not going to endorse it. Her husband, President Clinton, has stated a couple of times publicly that it's a good idea in theory, but the devil's in the details. One of the things that we know is that it had to come, there's a committee that was formed, and basically I think it was Syria, Iraq, India, Argentina. I can't remember all of them, but at least Syria was on there. All you had to have was one no vote, and that was the end of that bill. So one voted no, and then the rest of them voted no. It then went to the UN General Assembly. And since we all know government bureaucracies always vote to increase their power, it passed unanimously. or not unanimously, but what was it, 153 to 6 or
4, yeah, something
like that. So, it's vast majority voted for it. Here's the problem with the UN treaty. One, it doesn't cover conventional weapons. Now, conventional weapons, you have to define it. These are basically small arms. Machine guns, light machine guns, assault rifles like the AK-47, the M1, and there's really not a lot of regulations there. What they are trying to regulate is, the transfer of nuclear information, which I think is a good idea. They're also trying to control the sale of things like tanks and planes, which are viewed as armor and planes.
Well, just let me read this to you, because I think that you've got it pretty much right, but this is at least what the reporting says.
All right.
It says the treaty covers a wide range of conventional weapons, including battle tanks, armored combat vehicles, large caliber artillery systems, combat aircraft, attack helicopters, missiles, and small arms. And then it goes on to say that signatories would be required to establish a national record-keeping system to track the trade in conventional arms. They would also have to ensure that weapons are not illegally diverted to terrorist organizations or other armed groups. In addition, governments would conduct risk assessments to determine whether arms exports were being used to abuse human rights, particularly those of women or children. Now, this sounds to me like this kind of goes after Russia almost exclusively. Now the United States does do a fair bit of arms trading to our allies, but we're not a wholesaler the way the Russians are. Am I wrong?
No, I believe that's correct. This is geared toward several European countries, and India, China, and Russia. If you look, you don't ever see a Taliban raising an M16. It just doesn't happen.
AK-47, baby.
All over the world. And, of course, you get the Chinese-made ones, and you get the Indian-made ones, and you get the Russian-made ones. So, when you're talking about trying to track all this stuff, there's 3 problems with this. Number one, and Blake hit it on the head, the United States really has a pretty good system in place that regulates where we send our weapons. There are occasional screw-ups like the Fast and Furious debacle where we, gave arms to, drug dealers. But outside of that, we are usually pretty regulated.
Iran-Contra?
Absolutely.
I'll toss one back at you. No, I guess
But the other thing is establishing a system where everybody has to then record their weapons at home. This is the first step to confiscation. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. This is what every dictator does, every single one. And it just makes it easier for people that want tyranny to take over different places. And I know I get a lot of lefty friends that think, oh, geez, I'm loony and nobody's going to be taking over America. Well, that's what they thought about Germany. That's absolutely what they thought about Germany. And in fact, the chancellor that was elected made a law that basically outlawed the Nazi Party from having weapons. And maybe 4 years later, that very same law was turned against the Jews to disarm them. And that's the problem that I have with it. At least 2 problems right there.
Well, we're coming up on another break. And so I guess all I'll say is that you are loony.
We can come back to that after the break.
You are completely loony. The first thing that I would notice is that this whole treaty has no enforcement body whatsoever. There's no enforcement teeth to this treaty at all. So we'll come back. I'm going to kind of take a little bit of issue with what Doc has to say about confiscation of weapons. But anyway, we're gonna take a short break. We've got more to talk about on this issue, also on some of the local politics that are going on. It's going to be really interesting to see if the legislature can get their business completed by the end of the term, which is coming up in like 6 weeks, I believe. And the main thing is Branstad's legacy package, his education reform. So stay tuned to Webcast One Live.
Trosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertroshandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertrosh and Associates.
Welcome back to Doc and Lefty. This is Lefty coming at you from the Webcast One live studio in beautiful downtown Des Moines. You know, this is the kind, I love this time of year, but I hate the fact that it is 15 degrees in the morning when I go to work. It's 60 degrees while I'm basically at work, and then it's getting down to 30 degrees and I'm on my way home from work. So it might be light longer, but man, the cold weather just will not let up.
Yeah. And it's brutal because you get up, it looks nice and sunny. You put your sweatshirt on, your shorts, your flip-flops. You know, I'm good to go. I go outside and I think, man, I go back inside and change.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about. Getting after the loony. Let's talk about the fact that you want to see more violence. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding about that one. That's not a fair assertion. Talking to a peaceful guy over here. First of all, we're talking about this arms treaty that the U.S. sponsored for years. Well, it's co-sponsored, this treaty that's come up. The first thing that I would notice is that there's no enforcement agency created by it. They want every country to pass its own laws, which means that the treaty and the enforcement of the treaty will be subject to the American legislative process, which is a scary enough and daunting enough prospect in and of itself, but should allay a lot of the suspicion, a lot of the fears of all the, shall we call them, gun enthusiasts out there who think this is a gun grab, because it's absolutely not a gun grab. Second of all, you know, honestly, like this is more, it's geared towards international trade of weapons. And this idea that we're going to institute another Nazi Germany by a rational and legislatively authoritative set of policies to regulate the international trafficking of weapons is just, to me, that it's a complete and total pipe dream. First of all, I mean, the UN, the existence of the UN and the international cooperation that the UN has been able to foster since the end of World War II has prevented things like this from happening. We haven't had another world war, have we?
No, but that's not necessarily because you had the UN there. It's because the two major superpowers had the ability to annihilate the world. Neither one of them really wanted to push the button. I mean, honestly, that's how I look at it, because all the UN has become is, geez, what's America doing and how can we tear it down? I mean, we've had that argument about how useless the UN is. My second point about this treaty is it going to supersede our own Constitution? Because it says strictly in the Constitution there can be no treaty above our Constitution.
I don't think it says that in the Constitution.
I think it does.
I don't think it does.
I've read that a couple of times.
The Constitution is the law of the land, but so are treaties. Treaties basically become statutes when they're confirmed by the Senate. So,
all right. Well, but here's my point about being loony. You never see a loony righty. You never see that. You only see a loony lefty. Lefty. Loony. It just goes hand in hand.
Anyway.
No, but really, but if you're going to set up, here's what the problem is. The United States tries to follow the rules. All right. We really do. So when you have something like this, it's only going to be the United States that's really coming up with anything purposeful. Now, that's leaving out our Australian friends and our British friends and our European allies. But you can see what the problem is going to be is those of us that believe in the rule of law are going to be at a disadvantage for those countries that are dictatorships and really believe in the rule of the right to rule. And that's my issue with the UN gun grab, you know. And yeah, maybe it won't happen today. Maybe if we pass this, we start registering our guns, maybe we won't turn into Nazi Germany today. But Nazi Germany took a solid 20 years to turn into Nazi Germany.
After one disastrous world war, after the complete and total cluster that was the Weimar Republic, and Hitler. Let's not forget that it took Hitler to get the Nazis into power. So anyway, you know what? Honestly, it devolves into this every time we talk about guns. I want to talk about education and happy stuff.
Education and happy stuff.
Education and happy stuff. So the Iowa Senate.
So let me have the final word on the UN gun grabbers.
I don't think we're going to let you do that. So we got the Iowa Senate has passed passed this education proposal.
That's what happens when you give a lefty power.
That's right. Oh, that's clever. So the governor has been pushing this education reform since the new term was sworn in. Since the legislature was sworn in. And basically, this is his all-out, lock, stock, and barrel legacy push. He has been really sort of kind of squishy on whether or not he's going to run again in 2014. He probably will. He's not beatable at this point. There are no Democrats out there that could take him down, so there's no real reason for him not to run, except he might finally kind of be a little bit tired of the rat race and the fact that this Republican Party of 2013 is not the Republican Party that he presided over when he was the governor the first time.
No.
He didn't have to deal with this much opposition in his own party ever in his political career, and he might be getting sick of it. That's speculation on my part. I don't know. He certainly has been doing some weird things in the governor's mansion, but he hasn't been doing awful, terrible, tear Iowa apart things. So, he given money away to the Egyptians to make a feed plant whatever plant that is in southeast Iowa.
Oh yeah,
that a little bit kind of weird, kind of a giveaway there. But so the Senate plan that they just passed agrees with the governor's plan to start to increase base teacher pay to $35,000 a year, and I think that we can both agree that teacher salaries have to go up if we're going to see any appreciable increase on educational performance.
Well, now, I agree that teachers are underpaid. I agree with that 100%. And in case my friend Chris Butler is listening, I've said this to you several times. I think we need to pay teachers more. They're the ones that are in charge of educating our children. However, I think that throwing more money at the problem is not going to get us greater results. I think there's an institutional problem within our educational system. The number one problem, the way I see it, is No Child Left Behind. It's a terrible law. It's enacted by Bush, and I don't think it's a defensible. I understand why he did it, but it's not a defensible thing because No Child Left Behind means every child staying still. The second thing is you have to start, you don't have to break the power of the unions, but you have to make it so that you can remove teachers that are bad and be able to replace them with teachers that are good. If you have a young teacher that's bad, you can recover. But if you get some 50-year-old kindergarten teacher, been teaching for 25 years, and her results are poor every year, at some point you have to say, listen, you can't teach anymore, or you have to go back to school. Those are the two main problems I see facing our educational system. I'm all for, one of the rare times I'm for increasing spending is for education.
Well, there's a couple of points that I would say. When I remember, my dad was a school teacher for 30 years and he was a union guy and was a union delegate to the State House a lot. Not necessarily I should say national conferences and things like that. I don't think he ever lobbied in Des Moines. If I don't believe he did. I don't think I have to check with him about that. Anyway, so I grew up with this sort of strong union kind of teacher background. I remember his frustration at all the non-union teachers in his district in Northwest Iowa where I grew up, and how these folks expected all these benefits and expected all the good contracts that the union negotiated for its members. And here you got these dues paying union members. I don't want to get into right to work and all that stuff. I'm just talking about teachers specifically. You had these dues paying teachers that with the power of their union, the ability to collectively bargain to get a decent salary schedule out of their school district. And at the time when he was working there and when I was going to school, the school district was sitting on plenty of money and could afford to do it. This is a more wealthy area up in Northwest Iowa. And these non-union teachers would come in expecting the same sort of cut, and you have to sit there and say, "Hey, wait a minute! You opted out. You didn't want to participate, whether because you didn't want to pay the dues or you had a political objection to to unions or whatever. You decided not to participate. Why should you get the benefit of our good health care plan that we were able to negotiate our salaries and all that stuff? I don't want to be, and so the presence of the unions has been necessary. What I will say about this, though, about this education reform package, is that paying teachers more is fine, and I take your point that getting bad teachers out of there is a way to go. But how are we going to do it?
Absolutely,
because
we can hit that right after the break. All right, we'll be back after the break, just here in about a minute or two.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back to this last segment. This is Lefty. We're going to close the show out here, but I just want to kind of talk about the specifics of the Senate proposal here, because it's got to go to conference now, and because the difference.
We're talking about the governor's education plan and the Senate education plan.
Thanks for bringing that in. I was assuming that our listeners are so educated with that great public education they get in Iowa that they were following from the last break, but I do appreciate you reminding in case some people are coming in at the end and want to piggyback on some of what the show's already done for the previous hour. So what I will say is one of the main differences between the Senate and the House bill is that the House bill passed 2% allowable growth and the Senate passed 4% allowable growth. Now, you would think they'd be able to compromise at 3%. But what everybody says who thinks that allowable growth is something that we need, and it's been in state law since the 70s, is that a lot of these school districts need allowable growth to be at like 6%. Maybe not the more wealthy urban school districts. I could think of a couple around Des Moines that would fit that bill, or in Cedar Rapids or Iowa City. But you constantly hear that 6% is really the magic number, and they never get there. They never, ever get there. And so I wanted to kind of get your take on allowable growth, because the governor this entire time said, we're not going to do allowable growth until we get my reform measures on the table.
Well, I think I agree 100%. You have to have allowable growth. You have to be able to, keep your buildings up. The school I went to middle school at down in Indianola was, when I went, 35 years old. Well, fast forward, oh my God, another 35 years, they're still running kids through there. I was just down there the other day, last Friday, still running kids through that same facility. What they've done is they put, trailers out around in the parking lot. Well, that's just ridiculous. You have to be able to plan and move forward and have your infrastructure in place. The second thing is, I agree with Senator or Governor Branstad that you have to have some reforms in place so that you can get better results. Like we were talking about in the prior segment, trying to, get teachers that are good and rewarding them, and trying to get rid of teachers that have a history of poor performance and improving them as well, or cutting them loose. One of the things we deal with in the nonprofit world, since I'm medical director out at Youth Homes of Mid-America, just a plug in case anybody wants to donate to them, is they essentially don't get a lot of allowable growth. They fight just not to be cut. And one of the things I know about the process is they always ask for a lot more than what they need, knowing they're going to get hacked in half.
Right.
Now, the difference between 2% allowable growth and 4% allowable growth, having talked to some of my sources in the legislature, really is that 2% is what's going to allow us to maintain our balanced budget amendment options, or our what do you call that? We have to meet our budget.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we have to meet that goal.
Because
that's our obligation.
Well, and that's sort of the problem with having the biennial budget that Branson pushed so hard for when he got elected in 2010 is that now we've got to carry that through for the next 2 years, and 2% allowable. And I understand where you're coming from. It just maybe was a little bit more short-sighted on the front end. The thing is, and the problem that gets these things get demagogued so bad about, especially about allowable growth, is that, well, you're just trying to get more money. Well, a lot of this stuff is already spent. I mean,
yes,
1% allowable growth, that could be 15 teachers that get hired back after layoffs. I know a really good friend of mine teaches up in Northwest Iowa, about 30 miles from where we grew up, and his wife is a teacher as well. They're teaching the same school district. Well, they find out they got 3 beautiful children. 2 of them are twins. She found out that she was pregnant with twins the day she got her pink slip. Now, right? Now they had gotten she had gotten a pink slip before, and I know you hear politicians talk about this all the time, but this is a story this is a conversation that he and I had. She got pink slips all the time. They both had. And they never had to worry about it because, you're going to be laid up. We're not going to renew your contract. And then they do some negotiation. They renew it for the next year. Living like that can be kind of stressful, but it had happened so often that they're kind of getting used to the whole back and forth. Well, this happened in around 2008, 2009. I remember when, there were some teachers that had just graduated from the Drake School of Education, getting their master's degrees, who couldn't get placed around then. That was about when I was getting ready to graduate law school in 2010. And so that whole 5-year period was really, really tough for people. She didn't get her job back. Has twins. Got a job eventually 2 or 3 years later, but now you got medical bills because you get kicked off of the state's medical insurance. Yes. All these real world things that happen. And maybe that 1%, and once again, this is rhetoric, but maybe that 1% could have saved her job.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It could have saved her job. But part of the problem is people think that once they start working for the government or start working for a union, they're automatically guaranteed safety and security. Whereas in the private sector, there is nothing like that. It's sink or swim.
Well,
and it's not that I don't have sympathy for your friend. I don't. But hold on.
You said I don't. You meant
I didn't. I do.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that, just willy-nilly increasing teachers' salaries and, giving them all these benefits when they don't perform and don't, produce children that can perform well on international standard tests. I don't think that's the way to go, just to give them a blank check.
Well, and you're speaking more broadly. Now, what do you think?
Yes, I am.
We're wrapping up. We're getting close to the end, but I wanted to pick your brain about a couple of the things. I don't know. I can't remember if it made it into the proposals or not, but Branstad had pushed this mentoring idea. And just really quickly, I want to get your thoughts on that, because what it sounded like to me when I heard the proposals is this is taking good teachers out of the classroom. And it gave them extra incentives and bonuses, essentially, and they were really more stipends to compensate for time out of the classroom to, if they're doing well and their kids are performing well, to go and be a mentor teacher for another. And there are different levels, and those escape me. It's not really important right now as we're wrapping up this hour. But is that something going forward that would help maybe define what a merit-based teacher is?
Well, what the governor's proposals, the way I understood them, was essentially a residency for other teachers.
Right.
And I believe it is a good idea to have mentoring, but I don't believe you should be taking the good teacher out of the class. You should be bringing the poor teacher into the good teacher's class. One of the things, now we're focusing a lot on teachers. It is not entirely the teacher's fault that the kids aren't meeting their expectations. I can tell you, working with children, I'm going to bet at least 60% of the problem is related to the parents and the family structure.
And I would as the son of a teacher, I would probably agree with that. What I am going to say, we're going to make that the last word. The parents got to get their act together as well. You heard it from a licensed family psychiatrist, folks. Parents, you're part of the problem. So get with the program and become part of the solution. Anyway, thanks for tuning in tonight. This has been a really great discussion, I think. We're going to have a lot more of these kind of talks as the legislative session at the State House winds up. But anyway, on behalf of my good friend and partner, Dr. Patrick Perosh, this is Blake Lefty Labinas coming at you from Doc and Lefty Webcast 1 Live. We'll see you next week, 6 to 7.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Love these guys. Get over here. Love both of them.